14.
20.
39.
38.
19.
Like young people, like out on the streets and kind of just hanging around with friends and stuff.
Me and my group of friends, because I think, you know, we're all still teenagers.
Blasting the music out, smoking, drinking, God knows what time of the day.
Social media, addiction, spending lots of time in their bedrooms.
Going through a very difficult period in their life where as a 38-year-old, I would not want to be in that situation right now.
Sometimes, like, if you see a group of teenagers maybe like hoods up and kind of like looking a bit rough and stuff, then yeah.
I'd say you can't say that you don't give off some kind of judgment towards teenagers, whether you intend to or not. You know, I think even some of the people that I grow up around, you do give off judgment when you see them doing something that you don't morally agree with. So, you know, if there's people causing trouble, kicking off in class, you know, it creates like a stigma and a stereotype around teenagers.
Like, yeah, because it's think like, not that I think it's a good thing to make like prejudgments of people, but like you do naturally do it in your head. Whether you portray it out loud is a completely different question.
I would like to think that I don't, but I probably am guilty of assuming when I see a group of teenagers hanging around that they're up to no good.
Yes, I think I do. I think teenagers now are, if I'm being honest, I do think they're portrayed as being different to what they were when I was, say, growing up as a teenager, in the fact that they were renowned as being lazy and this and that.
Yeah, probably, because I think a lot of people's opinions of teenagers now is like a lot of older people don't like us and think that we're, you know, up to like no good and stuff, but yeah, probably.
Yeah, definitely. I remember looking at, like, I was in year 8 and I was looking at the year 10s and year 11s and thinking that they were like the scariest thing I'd ever come across because of how tall they were and how, you know, broad they were and stuff, and the trouble that they would cause.
When I was a teenager myself, it was different because it's kind of like you do feel like on the spot. As I kind of matured past my teenage years, it's kind of felt like I kind of get where they were coming from in a sense, because it's like, well, you're still a teenager and it's still like the amount of like wrong decisions that will impact your life later down the stage. But obviously at the time when you make them, it doesn't really make a difference. So it's like, I get where they're coming from, but at the time, no.
Probably, yeah. I think when you are the age of the age group that you're talking about, you definitely see things differently. But then I think as I've raised teenagers, I've probably had a better understanding of what they go through and what it's like to be a teenager in 2019, and the struggles that they face and the things that they're up against. So I guess I am probably on the fence and a bit in the middle with my views of teenagers, because I definitely see both sides.
It's a difficult one to answer because you live as a teenager, and now as you're an older adult, you see the problems that your children go through as a teenager.
I'd say like older people probably have a lot of prejudice, like thoughts to teenagers, because they might have had like a bad experience where they've told them to I don't know, stop something and they've just gave a bit of back chat and stuff.
I think there's a need to be wary of some people, but it's not always teenagers. You know, a lot of the trouble caused and a lot of the people in prison and a lot of the abuse that people receive isn't always from teenagers. It's a lot of the time it's from adults, and it's just the way that they've grown up. It probably started when they were a teenager. I don't know if there's need to be prejudice to teenagers, because not all teenagers are like that. I don't think, I wouldn't look at any of my friends and say that people should judge them and give them a bad name just because they're a teenager, but some people definitely.
It's so hard to answer, because it's like, I get why people are, but I don't think there's necessarily a necessity to. I don't think everyone has to come with like a label of like, oh, you're that, and that's what you stick to. But it's kind of like hard, like I said earlier, it's kind of hard not to, like naturally in your head, it's kind of like you just do it. Whether it's for like a daily thing or like you need to do it to like almost be wary of people. I get why people are wary of people and do make those judgments to be wary of people, because it's like, you don't, just because I've made a judgment on someone doesn't necessarily mean it's correct. I think you just naturally do it anyway, so I think it's just good to openly let yourself do it, because it's like, if you sat there and be like, no, I shouldn't judge them, it's like, well, that judgment can almost like help a situation or like a circumstance, if that makes sense. So like, if you were to immediately, like, to elaborate on that, if you were to walk past someone in the street and like you see them coming up and they're like walking with like a swagger about them and like dressed not particularly great and blasting music and just a bit of a dodgy character, you can immediately be like, right, I'll cross the road because I don't want to, like, just in case. And then, but if you were to carry on walking on the same side of the street and you pulled out like a knife or like threatened you, like just to be like completely out there, then obviously to make that judgment you'd have crossed the street and you would have just avoided that, or at least helped the situation.
Yes, I think so. I think that it's a minority of teenagers that are a threat and a problem, and that give the rest of teenagers a bad name. However, those teenagers that do behave like that, we have genuine reason to be concerned about their behaviour and the things that they are willing to do and the lengths that they're willing to go to prove a point or to be part of a gang. Or
no, I wouldn't say there is. I think it's about changing the way that people see teenagers. I don't think the teenagers do themselves any favours in how they behave and how they, the pictures that you see of teenagers now taking pictures. They want to have this gangster look and they want to be perceived as this certain image. I don't think that does them any favours in wanting to change the way that they're perceived. So I don't think that teenagers do themselves any favours. I understand that they're just doing it to get along with their peers, basically.